In 1918, the world was still in the midst of World War I. The outcome was still uncertain. Germany was advancing across Europe. In June of 1918, the Battle of Belleau Wood took place, which was strategically important. Russia had the Bolshevik Revolution and left the war. That left 50 German divisions to move from the Eastern Front and turn against France. After years of deadlock, Germany launched their last desperate spring offensive, annihilating the British Fifth Army and getting 40 miles of Paris. This battle lasted a month and was fought oftentimes with bayonets. The Marines were undersupplied and outmanned. Well, correction, they were outnumbered. Marines are never outmanned. Fighting day and night and without relief, without sleep, often without water, and for days without rations. Time and time again, officers seeing their lines cut to pieces, seeing their men so dog-tired that they fell asleep under shell fire, hearing the wounded calling for water that they were unable to supply, seeing men fight on after they've been wounded until they dropped unconscious. Time after time, officers seeing these things, believing that the very limit of human endurance had been reached, would send a message back to their post command that their men were exhausted. But the answer would come back each time. The line must hold, and if possible, the line must attack. And the lines obeyed. Without water, without food, without rest, they went forward. Companies had been so torn and lacerated by losses, they hardly even could consist of a platoon anymore. But their lines held, and they kept advancing. In more than one case, companies lost every officer, leaving a sergeant and sometimes a corporal to command and advance the army. On June 13th, the Germans sent reinforcements. And 2 o'clock in the morning, a massive attack was launched by the Germans along the whole front. Without regard of their men or the casualties, they hurled everything they had against the Marines. The Marines were backed up with the trees and the boulders of Bos de Bella behind them, and the only shelter they had were scattered ruins, and the thinning lines of the Marines repelled the attack. And so it went, day after day, night after night, while time after time messages were sent to post command saying loss is heavy, difficult to get runners through, some never returned, but morale is excellent. The troops are all in, but they are exhausted. Then on June 24th, a tremendous barrage was launched by the Germans. The Germans were determined to end the battle that day, and they threw everything they had against the Marines. The barrage of artillery was so great that the trees were shattered into splinters. But when the artillery stopped, the Marines that remained fixed their bayonets and charged the field, up the hill and straight to the Germans. And now it was certain that they were defeated. The Germans retreated. The German command summoned the field marshal to their headquarters and demanded to know what happened. The field marshal explained that the German forces were superior, that they fought hard, and they were certain of victory. But then the United States Marines would not give up. In fact, they fought like the very hounds of hell. To this day, Marines are known across the world as devil dogs. There are many things that differentiate Marines from the other branches, but I'm only going to talk about two. And I know I'm close to Fort Bragg, so I'll be careful. But first, Marines train harder and longer. The Marine boot camp is much longer, and after boot camp, they immediately go to another training called basic warrior training for weeks. Then the rest of their career, Marines will be constantly training. The second difference, no matter what their job, supply clerk, cook, artillery, military police, fighter pilot, helicopter pilot, mechanic, literally there are hundreds of jobs, and no matter what their rank, from a new private to a 4-star general, and even the Commandant of the Marine Corps, every Marine is first and foremost a rifleman. Every Marine will qualify on the rifle range every year, and that score will directly impact their promotions. There's no question whether they will qualify, because they will stay at the rifle range until they do. And it doesn't matter how long that takes. Army General Pershing once remarked, "There is nothing more dangerous on the battlefield than a Marine with his rifle." Now that brings us to 2022 in North Carolina. What is the state of the party? My friends, I can say unequivocally that the state of our party is good. In fact, it's great. I've traveled across the state this year, going to different events, and county parties are having record crowds at their conventions. Records are being shattered at Lincoln Reagan Day dinners. Now, the 9th District has a long and storied history. Since 1956, we've won 28 consecutive elections. We have elected a Republican to Congress. That's the longest streak in North Carolina, and I am confident the new 9th will continue this tradition. In fact, the Democrats were so fearful of the 9th District, they split us up into 4 districts. The old 9th District is now in the 7th, 8th, and 9th districts, and 14th. So my friends, we have a legacy that we need to build on. I've been the district chairman for 10 years. I've served with 5 different state chairmen and 5 different executive directors. I was there just a few years ago when we were in financial trouble, where we couldn't make the state payroll. I had to call Committeewoman Dr. Fisher, and I asked her if the RNC could help. And they agreed to make the staff payroll for 3 months. Look how far we've come in such a short time. I can say without a shadow of doubt that Michael Watley is the best chairman I have served with. I'm willing to argue that he's the best chairman in the country. Jason Simmons is an amazing executive director. And we were so fortunate that he was available last year when we had an opening. The entire staff, from Matt Judge, Greg Fossil, and of course Sarah Newby, they're all incredible. We have the best staff in the country. We are in the best financial shape the party has ever been in. For an odd year election, we have a huge staff. Normally after the presidential election, we cut half the staff. We haven't had to do that. We still have staff out working year-round because of the financial shape that we're in. As we go into this critical 2022 election cycle, if we adopt the 2 qualities of the Marines I mentioned, if we start training now, Josh Fritz at the NCGOP is constantly having training sessions on everything we need to win elections. If we get our volunteers to start now, learn the phone banking, the door knocking, the poll watching, everything else. If everybody in this room, no matter how long you've been involved, no matter how big of a title you have or no title, you can be the chairman or the secretary or the congressman or a volunteer. If every one of us become a poll worker first and foremost, and make sure every poll is manned every minute of every day through early voting and on to election day. If we work long and hard now, no matter what the polls say, then on November 8th, President Biden, assuming he's still president, will pick up the phone and call Nancy and Chuck and ask what happened. And soon-to-be former Speaker of the House and soon-to-be former Senate Majority Leader Chuck will say, we were certain of victory. But then, the Republicans of North Carolina would not give up. In fact, they fought like the very hounds of hell. My friends, victory is ours. Now let's go take it.